Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers, author and teacher. I have a guest today, Matt Lerner, who is an expert in Yoga Nidra. Matt, how are you?
I'm very good today. Thank you, Jay. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. So you teach Yoga Nidra. What is Yoga Nidra, and um, how do you practice it? Maybe you explain how you get into it first.
Okay, well, there's a lot of misconceptions about Yoga Nidra. So sometimes I might be talking about the common Yoga Nidra, and sometimes I'll be talking about a more authentic traditional style Yoga Nidra, which is what I am. I mean, they're both great and fun, but just like there's even when you talk about the word yoga, there's a lot of exercise being called yoga, and it's kind of like yoga, but it's not really. So we'll go back and forth between those a little bit because a lot of people are probably familiar with a little bit of each. Yoga Nidra literally means yogic sleep. The word Nidra means sleep, Yoga Nidra, yogic sleep. And it's kind of it's a state of awareness that's similar to deep sleep, but in one level you're aware. My teacher, Swami Rama, said once when someone was asking about it, because he had done an experiment at back in the 1960s at the Menninger Foundation, and they had him all wired up, and he did a yoga nidra, and they asked him, "Well, how could you?" Oh, and he reported all sorts of conversations that he could hear in the control room and other things like that. And they said, "How could you do that? Because your brain was asleep." They had all the electroencephalograms on him, and he said, "Well, my brain was asleep, but I wasn't asleep." So it's kind of a conscious state of deep sleep. It sounds a little bit like a contradiction, and it probably not really worth talking about how to clarify that too much, because it's really an experience more than a philosophical concept. So that's the first part. I mean, I can go on. So if you want to direct me, or I can rattle on a little bit more if you want.
Yeah,
Have you?
you can go on. Just go. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Have you done some yoga nidra, Jay?
No, I've seen a few things on YouTube about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of like into like a developing a deep form of relaxation meditation, and then I saw
Mm-hmm.
Yoga Nidra online. I was like, oh, that's a lot of kind of what I want to do and what I've done
Mm-hmm.
in the past. I wonder,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a lot of people have done really deep meditation and they're in the same state as Yoga Nidra, but they don't even necessarily have a name for it.
Well, let me clarify some stuff. I'll talk about four terms here that most people are aware of. Well, there's relaxation, and relaxation is just kind of chilling out. Your brain goes into alpha waves, and you're basically awake. But being relaxed and awake is being different than being asleep. There's some relaxation is basically being awake. Meditation is a type of focused awareness, but you are awake. You're not asleep. You're not somewhere else. You're awake, and your mind is very focused. Now, I'm speaking about meditation again in the traditional yogic sense. There's meditation from Buddhist philosophies and even Christian and Judaism and Islam. All have forms of meditation. It's pretty universal. But so specifically from a yoga perspective, and by the way, I'm not a scholar. I'm going to use some words here, but I'm really just a lifelong practitioner. I've been doing stuff like this since the mid '70s. But I haven't really. I'm not really a scholar who can like start quoting. I can quote some stuff, I guess, but I mean, a scholar would start to laugh at me. But I am a practitioner, so I have a lot of experience with it. So meditation is a focused awareness where your mind is awake and very focused. And the best there's a couple of analogies. One analogy is where if you think of like a regular light bulb and a laser beam, and a light bulb has a nice soft glow, and you can take the same 10 watts and focus into a laser beam, and you can cut through a sheet of steel with it. So in the same sense, you're just refocusing the direction and the vibration of consciousness, and meditation is a state different than relaxation. So there's relaxation and there's meditation. They're both types of being awake. The brain goes into slightly different patterns, but they're both basically waking patterns. The yogis talk about 4 different states of consciousness, 3 of which we're all pretty familiar with. There's waking, and there's dreaming, REM sleep, and there's deep sleep. And then they talk about the 4th sleep, Turiya, which we won't really get into right now because we won't have the time for that. And I'm not really an expert on it either. Meditation is part of that waking state. Dreaming is something totally different. And Yoga Nidra, if you hook someone up to a machine and monitor them, it will look like they are asleep. So the brain is definitely in a different type of state, and the experience is very different. Meditation is definitely feels generally relaxed. All sorts of images can come up and you let them go. You bring your mind back to focus. But in Yoga Nidra, it's more like jumping into that state of deep sleep and feeling whole and complete, and but yet still being aware as if you're watching yourself in that state, and still able to watch what's going on here, be aware of what's going on around you through your various senses, but your brain is basically asleep. So a little bit different. One more term I want to throw in here, and then maybe I'll take it in whichever direction you want to go, is the term shavasana. It translates as corpse pose. And if you've ever taken a regular yoga class, or if your listeners have taken a yoga class, at the end of class, usually lie down on your back with your arms and legs spread a little bit, eyes closed, and there's some variations of it. But basically, that's a type of deep relaxation that you do after a yoga class. In Yoga Nidra, you're also in that position called Shavasana, but Shavasana is a state of relaxation. You are awake and aware, but you're just relaxed. In Yoga Nidra, you're basically asleep. So it's kind of like, I like to often, as a shorthand, call it a Shavasana on steroids. A Shavasana might be 5 minutes to 15 minutes long. Yoga Nidra is typically 25 to 60 minutes long. But it's a different state of awareness that you go into. Another thing I want to mention, which might guide your questions and the discussions, is that Yoga Nidra, by the way, this goes for meditation too, but most people confuse Yoga Nidra with the practice that you're doing. Like if you came to a Yoga Nidra class of mine, I would guide you through a whole series of practices. You'd be focusing here and doing this and watching the breath and a whole series of things. But that's not really Yoga Nidra. Those are just the practices that kind of set you up to go into the state of Yoga Nidra. And in the same way, I would say most people, when they're meditating, aren't really meditating. They're doing those practices that lead to a state of meditation. So let me make this real normal for us. If you said you were having trouble going to sleep, I could probably give you a whole bunch of techniques that would help you fall asleep in a normal way without talking about Yoga Nidra. Turn off the lights, lie down in your bed, don't be too hot or too cold, don't drink coffee, maybe drink some hot milk and honey. We could go through a whole series of things. And if you did all those things properly, or even if you didn't do them properly, sooner or later you would probably fall asleep, or at least you would fall asleep faster and easier than you did if you were doing dumb things like watching TV, drinking a cup of coffee, turning off the TV and trying to fall asleep. It might take you, a half hour, an hour to fall asleep, where if you follow these techniques, it would lead your mind into a state where this state that's naturally within you, regular sleep, would rise up and start to take you away. First, you'd start to go into kind of a daydream, then a deep dream, and then into the deep sleep. But that would all happen. But I can't teach you to fall asleep. That's something that has to happen to you. I can't teach someone to meditate. That's a state that they can go into when the conditions are right. And a skillful teacher can guide people into those conditions and hopefully, like I say, make it easier and deeper, the experience. but it's not the teacher doing it. It's not the practices that it's doing it. It's a state that comes up from within. And Yoga Nidra is the same way. So I could lead you through these practices, and you might just have a nice, pleasant experience. Some people have a, oh my gosh, what's going on here? It's taking so long, and they're all nervous. Or you might actually experience the Yoga Nidra state. But by looking at them, you couldn't really tell what's going on because they're just sitting there lying with their eyes closed, breathing smoothly. So it's what's going on inside that happens. And again, it's not a practice, it's an experience. It's a state of awareness. That's what Yoga Nidra really is.
Well, and I've heard like different people that come from like hypnotherapy and like Silva meditation. They talk about different brain waves. Like
Mm-hmm.
most meditations in the alpha, like you said, but there could be like the theta, which is like a deeper level. It's getting closer to delta, which is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that kind of where you're trying to take us? Is into more the theta, but
Yeah, what like
actually going into the delta a bit too?
well, I didn't brush up on my brainwave patterns. I have looked at it a couple times in the last couple of years as I've been teaching Yoga Nidra to yoga teachers more so that they can teach their students. But yeah, basically, normal awakeness is a combination of alpha and beta waves. And if you're thinking there'll be more beta waves. If you're more relaxed, there'll be more alpha waves, and it'll go back and forth depending on your state of awareness. And yes, as you get into both meditation and Yoga Nidra, in meditation, the beta waves will drop off. There'll be more alpha, but none of these things are in isolation. There's also some theta and delta waves going on in meditation too, but um, I don't know how the scientists classify them, but the dominant state in meditation for most people tends to be alpha, but it really does get into a lot of the delta and theta waves too. And there's one more type of brain wave that's pretty common. I think it's gamma, which is a really high frequency. Like if you're really nervous and agitated, and those are like up in the, I think, 80,000 hertz, very high frequency. You wouldn't be experiencing that in relaxation or meditation or in Yoga Nidra, but that'd be if you're like really wired. And then as you slow it down, it turns into alpha and those other ones. But the delta and the theta are the really slow, deep ones, and those are found in both meditation and Yoga Nidra. It's hard to tell because a lot of the scientists who report this stuff, they don't really know the difference between Yoga Nidra and meditation and just a good alpha relaxed state. So it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on. But yeah, so the brain changes, the patterns change, and those patterns make huge differences in the way we feel at the moment and in the ongoing development of our experience, day to day, in our growth and changes in our awareness.
So it's like, unless you're hooked up to machines and being monitored, you may never really know how far you went, how deep you went.
Well, even if you're hooked up to machines, you wouldn't really know how far you went because, like I say, the scientists don't really know enough about it. I mean, they're learning more and more, but they often will focus on one particular type of meditation. Like TM has had a lot of research done on it. There was a book back in the 70s written by a guy, Dr. Benson, called The Relaxation Response. And his technique of counting up to 10 and back down to 1 was kind of standardized. So scientists could experiment on it. But is that the same type of meditation that a yogi is doing when he goes into a deep meditation? I don't know. So the science, I think you probably know more about it from your own experience than you would from the machines. But the machines are interesting. I've never really hooked up to them. I have once or twice, but not gone into really deep states and understood what was going on. So I really can't speak to that. I'd love to try that sometime. I've had a friend who's done that a couple times. But
How did
one
you
more
get
thing I
into
want.
Yoga Nidra?
Let me say one more thing before that. So how did I get into Yoga Nidra? I'll come back to that. But let me say something about a lot of people, even one of my colleagues and teachers, a guy named Swami J. I can't say his full name, so he just makes it simple, Swami J. He studied with the same teacher that I did, Swami Rama, back in the 70s and 80s. And he is a scholar, and he's a Swami. He's like into this full time. I think I sent you a link to some of his stuff as we were corresponding. But even he uses the term a Yoga Nidra meditation. A lot of people say, oh, I'm going to do a Yoga Nidra meditation. But again, on a technical level, it's not really a meditation. So meditation is this focused awareness. Yoga Nidra is this focused awareness while you're awake. Yoga Nidra is this deep meditation while you're sleeping. So there's those two differences. And a lot of people will call it a meditation. So anyway, you asked how I got into Yoga Nidra, unless you have a follow-up on what I just said. Okay, I'll go into how I got.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so I got into Yoga Nidra through my study of yoga. This is back in 1975. A friend gave me a book, which I had seen a few years before. The first called Be Here Now, a book called Remember, Be Here Now by a teacher named Ram Dass, and I kind of consider him my first teacher. Even though I've never studied with him privately or whatever, but he was a huge influence on me. I've seen him in public gatherings before he passed. His name was Ram Dass. He used to be known as Richard Alpert. He was a professor at Harvard. He worked with Timothy Leary. They did a lot of experimenting on college sophomores with LSD back in the 60s. And Timothy Leary kind of stayed with LSD, and Richard Alpert went off to India and discovered yoga and meditation, and a guru. And so that was a book I'd seen. I'd seen it a few years before on my mother's night table. I don't know what she had, but it was just the strangest book I ever saw. But when my friend gave this book to me in 1975, it kind of spoke to me in a totally different way. And I started practicing yoga and meditation from the book during the summer between spring semester and fall semester during summer break. And I enjoyed the yoga and I enjoyed the meditation, but it wasn't awesome. It was just, okay, this is nice. I'd like to learn more about it. And I was pretty consistent with it over the summer. And when I went back to school, I studied at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I saw some posters for meditation, some posters for yoga. So I signed up for some classes. I took Transcendental Meditation, TM, as it's known. And but before I took TM, I had signed up for my first yoga class. And actually, it was that first yoga class that really changed my life. I did some gentle stretching, whatever the teacher had us do, nothing particularly hard. The school that I studied with, which was the Himalayan Institute, was my main lineage that I've studied in. Himalayan Institute's founded by Swami Rama. Did traditional gentle Hatha yoga and Raja yoga. And at the end of the class, we got into Shavasana, which again is this pose where you're lying down on your back, your arms are spread apart, your legs are spread apart, you close your eyes, and the teacher guides you through some exercises. And I suspect that, well, I don't know if I went into Yoga Nidra in that short Shavasana, which was maybe 12 or 15 minutes long, but I had an experience that I had never had before of extreme, to me at that time, I called it just deep relaxation. And many years later, I said, you know what, maybe I actually went, when I learned more about Yoga Nidra, I said, maybe I actually touched Yoga Nidra in that experience. But it was a totally state that I wasn't expecting to anything. I thought I was going to sit down and be relaxed and just feel good. And it was just, I discovered something in myself. It was almost like losing your virginity. If you can imagine that you didn't know that orgasmic capability was within your nervous system, and here it comes. I had an experience that was as far removed from my normal experiences I had experienced at that point in my life. And it was like, wow, so that really hooked me on. And I right away, it's like, wow, I've got to really study this. And about 2 weeks later, because when you sign up for TM, you go to a couple of introductory talks and they tell you to stop drinking and smoking and misbehaving for a couple of weeks so that you can experience a clean meditation experience. I went to the initiation class where they were going to give me my own private mantra. And I think in those days it was 25 or 50 bucks. These days it's like 2,500 bucks. It's a little bit ridiculous, but um, uh, I was expecting to be nice and relaxed, and I had a deep meditation experience. I don't know why I was blessed or privileged to have this, but it was very different than the Shavasana experience that I had. And so again, that reinforced that, and I continued my studies, and I just kept getting deeper and deeper, and studied a couple different styles of yoga while I was in college. And a year or so later, I met Swami Rama, who I then studied with pretty intensely, and I've just been studying with various whoever I can find now. He passed away in the 1990s, but I've just been trying to deepen my own experience and pass on what I can to mostly to other yoga teachers now, because there's so many yoga teachers that wouldn't be able to answer some of these questions, even though they think they're teaching Yoga Nidra and meditation, and they really need to take it a step deeper. Not that what they're teaching is bad, but it's not yoga meditation or Yoga Nidra, which they think they're often teaching. So yeah, I studied, became a teacher. That was in Madison, Wisconsin. I moved back to Ohio, started teaching along with a new friend, and just been teaching yoga and meditation and Yoga Nidra ever since.
Have you ever wanted to learn to meditate? Check out my book, Meditation for Everyone: How to Quickly Have a More Peaceful, Mindful, and Fulfilled Life, and support this channel. With Meditation for Everyone, you will learn to quickly and easily meditate, relieve stress and anxiety, alleviate depression, and have more joy, peace, and relaxation. What you will learn: mindfulness, the art of stillness, step by step on how to meditate, strategies for overcoming challenges to meditation, and much more. D. Mason said this is a nice meditation book, even for those already meditating. I agree with the statements that it will help to have a more peaceful, mindful, and fulfilled life. 4.6-star rating, available on Amazon.
Well, actually, I didn't start teaching Yoga Nidra till about 10 or 15 years later. I didn't quite understand it. I kind of got it mixed up with the Shavasana at the end of yoga class and stuff, but eventually it became clear to me the differences between them.
Well, like when you're doing Yoga Nidra, do you get a sense of well-being? Is there like a place of tranquility, and then it energizes you when you come out of it? Or what exactly are you feeling when you do Yoga Nidra?
I usually feel relaxed, but when you're lucky, you just kind of feel it's kind of hard. You know how if someone sees you in the morning after you've woken up, they go, "How'd you sleep?" And you can kind of say, "Well, I had a good sleep, or I had a terrible sleep." And it's like, well, how do you know? You might remember some of your dreams, but even the parts that you weren't dreaming often have an experience with them, but you can't really describe it. You just say, "Oh, I had a bad sleep," or "I had a good sleep." But you were asleep, so you can't really quite remember it. In the same way, Yoga Nidra I call like a really good sleep. Just you feel a place of stillness, a place of, and a lot of these things will sound like meditation too, but there's a different flavor to it. I don't know how to describe it. A stillness and a completeness. In a sense, I don't know, in emptiness, losing track of all, like you don't feel like, here I am lying in this position. You just feel an awareness of being, which I could use. I could use a lot of these same words for meditation. It's hard to describe the difference between them. But yeah, to me, it's a very relaxing state. It's very hard to teach Yoga Nidra because as a teacher, I kind of have to be focused and quiet. You have all these students in front of you, and they're going into this nice deep sleep, and you don't want to cough or or sneeze or anything like that. And if you don't have if you're not warm enough yourself, or if you get thirsty or you have to pee or something like that, as a teacher, it's hard. But as a student, it's just often a wonderful experience. And when I typically teach in most of the time, I teach a longer one of about 55 minutes, and I use that for when I'm teaching yoga teachers to teach Yoga Nidra. There's about 40 minutes of guided exercises I'll take them through. Like I say, I'll focus on this point, focus on your throat, focus on here, and breathe this way, and imagine the energy flowing. There's a whole series of things I'll take them through. But then at one point, I'll say, I'll speak to you again in 10 minutes, and then I'm just quiet. And that's where they have to really, hopefully totally, if they haven't already let go, that's when they'll be able to let go. And then there's about 5 more minutes coming out. So there's about 40 minutes of these preparations, and about 10 minutes of silence, and 5 minutes of coming back out of that silence to wake up again. And one of the things people say, they say both of these things. That they go, "Wow, I can't believe you were silent for 10 minutes," because sometimes just goes like that. And then the other things like, "Wow, I can't believe it's been over 50 minutes, the whole experience." Those are the lucky ones. There's always a few that fidget, or not always a few, but occasionally there's a few that fidget. And as a teacher, that's the skill you want to learn how to do, is how to guide them a little bit deeper and let them become comfortable with the silence. A lot of people aren't really comfortable with that stillness and that silence. So yeah, Yoga Nidra and meditation, they kind of approach it from different directions. I think Yoga Nidra is a little bit more accessible when it's taught correctly, but they're quite different. But they sound, in a lot of ways, they sound very much the same. Meditation, Yoga Nidra.
Well, I mean, do you use music or anything when you do it, or is it totally silent?
I personally do not use music. A lot, and this, you could say the same thing for a regular yoga class, or a regular meditation class, or Yoga Nidra. Music can be very pleasant. It can be enjoyable. It can. It's a good business model because a lot of students like it. But I tend to think that it's not really part of true Yoga Nidra. Now, having said that, I do. You ever heard of singing bowls? The little bowls that they're kind of Tibetan in their origin. I'll often use those as I'm going into it, but I do try to have some real silence without me interrupting them. Sometimes I'll use them if I hear somebody snoring. I might start to speak a little louder if it's in that first 40 minutes, so that they can kind of wake up. And if they fall asleep, it's fine. If they fall asleep, it'll be a nice sleep, but then they're not getting the benefit of Yoga Nidra. They're just getting a regular sleep. During that deep silence, sometimes if I hear people snoring, I might do one of the singing bowls that I'd been using earlier, just to kind of help keep them awake and aware while they're asleep. That sounds contradictory, but no, I don't like to use music in my yoga classes, or my meditation, or my Yoga Nidra, though it's not uncommon to do that. A lot of teachers do that. I consider it it's okay, but it's not as authentic, and I'm trying to teach an authentic practice. Let me mention a different perspective. I'd be surprised if you'd heard this before, just because a lot of the yoga teachers that I teach this to haven't heard this distinction. But Yoga Nidra and meditation are kind of companion practices to help you discover it's a process of self-discovery, self-realization, if you want to use that term, discovering yourself. We could spend an hour talking about what that means. But let's just keep it at that for a second. So you're trying to discover your inner self, your some deeper aspects of yourself that you're not usually aware of in the whole process of yoga as a whole. And these Yoga Nidra and meditation are two of the practices within the bigger framework of yoga. And as are the asana classes. A lot of people call that yoga. That's just one tiny little aspect of yoga. But in meditation, basically what it does is it gives you a type of self-awareness where you kind of see patterns and wisdom kind of flows forth from within you to help you go through life in a more complete, loving way. I'm maybe using too much. I try not to use too many soft words because a lot of yoga teachers will get too fluffy for for my taste. But for example, let's say you walk into I used to use this example when I was a student, or shortly after I was a student, way back when I first started teaching. Let's say you walk into the library and you see your girlfriend, and there's this big handsome guy leaning down over her, and they're smiling at each other, they're talking, and you get really, really jealous. Okay, meditation would give you the skill to say, wait a second, maybe something's going on here, but maybe she's not responding to it. Or maybe nothing's going on here. Maybe she had a question and this is her teaching assistant or her professor, and he's explaining something to her. It could look the same. And meditation gives you a chance to step back and say, okay, I don't really know what's going on here, but I don't have, maybe you feel a flash of jealousy, but you don't have to hold on it and become jealous. You're just aware that it came up, and meditation gives you the ability to let go of it. So you can think of all sorts of examples like that where meditation could give you an awareness where you might react differently in a situation, a little bit more aware and a little bit more complete and a little bit more friendly and nice. Yoga Nidra doesn't really do that. What Yoga Nidra does is, we all have personalities. Like, I don't tend to be a very jealous person. Maybe you're the type that gets really jealous, but I have my other issues. We all have our personalities with those building blocks that are deep inside of us. What Yoga Nidra, according to the yoga tradition, I have no evidence or science to back this up, just what my teachers have told me, is that Yoga Nidra burns away that tendency to be jealous. In yoga, these things are called samskaras. If you get into the whole traditional yogic trip, and I guess I'm not totally 100% traditional, because I don't necessarily believe in reincarnation. I kind of believe in the ongoing consciousness. We could get into some really interesting discussions about that, whether you're Jewish or Christian or Hindu or Islamic. There's a whole lot of perspectives on that, but I don't know where these tendencies in our personality come from, but we all have these tendencies. This person might be jealous, this person might be gentle, this person might be loving, this person might be defensive. And, traditionally in yoga, they say, oh, those are the kind of the habits that you developed over previous past lives. Well, I don't care if they came from past lives or not, but I know we have these seeds in us. And Yoga Nidra kind of dissolves those seeds so you don't get jealous in the first place, where meditation kind of gives you the ability to be aware of that jealousy and then make a conscious decision on what you should do. And you might act the same way. For example, you might have two mothers that are sitting on the porch talking to each other, and the kids are playing ball in the front yard, and a ball rolls out into the street, and both mothers go running out into the street and grabbing their children, and one starts yelling at them out of fear and anger, and the other one hugs them out of love and compassion. And they might both yell at this child and spank the child, because it's really important that the child needs to learn that lesson quickly, because you don't want children running into the street. So I'm not, maybe spanking the child or punishing them in some way might be appropriate. So you can't tell why they're doing it by looking at them, but the internal experience that the person having is two totally different experiences. And I would tend to believe that the child can kind of pick up on that difference too. I'd much rather be punished by the loving mother, even if it's the same whack on the bottom that I would get from the angry mother. Um, so uh, um, uh, so meditation could help you be aware that you're angry and mad, and then not act that way. Yoga Nidra would tend to keep you from even having that anger in the first place, just out of compassion, going to go grab that child as quickly as you can.
Yeah, because I heard a Buddhist monk. He's on YouTube, and he was talking about, like in mindfulness and meditation, you sit there with, like, if you have anxiety, you sit there and kind of observe it without judgment, and just kind of, it almost sort of becomes like a friend that's sitting over here, and it takes the
Yeah,
power away from it, but it's still kind of
yeah.
there to some extent. Whereas you're talking about the thing's just gone,
Well,
and I guess in
that's
a
from Yoga
sense
Nidra.
you could have a little
That's
bit of,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
go on. I'm not used to the delay, so I should
Oh
let you
yeah, yeah.
finish.
Because I was saying, yeah, yeah, because you're talking about how Yoga Nidra would get rid of the anxiety altogether. Is it possible that you could have sort of a blending that you're learning to deal with it, but at the same time it's sort of vanishing away at the same time? You know what I'm saying?
That that's why
Where
they're
both
very,
could be
very,
going
yeah,
on.
they're very good companion practices. Meditation, I would say, do every day, do it twice a day if you can. Yoga Nidra, boy, if you could, but who has time to do um, meditation and exercise and
Mm.
yoga, because the Yoga Nidra can take an hour. So if you can touch that place once a week or twice a week, it'll have a very powerful long-term effect. The more, the better, obviously. But it also means you're not having that time available for other things that could enrich in your life. So we all have to figure out what's best for us. But I would definitely say yes. If you're into yoga, discover both of these tools, meditation and Yoga Nidra, and then decide what balance you want to do. They'll both give you different complementary benefits.
So do you practice Yoga Nidra every day, or do you do it a few times a
No,
week and supplement
I
with a meditation
yeah,
practice?
I practice meditation every day. I used to do it twice a day. I mean, I'm not counting these little short 2 or 3 minute things. I usually sit for about 40 to 60 minutes every day in meditation. And Yoga Nidra, I try to do once a week. Sometimes I'm lucky and I'll do it twice a week, and sometimes I'll miss a week. But it's something I do like to stay in touch with.
Please like, subscribe to this channel, and share everywhere. Thank you. Well, like, sometimes in your meditation, does it cross over to the same plane that you'd be in Yoga Nidra, where you're, super relaxed and more in that state?
Um, but they're similar, but they're different. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I would say almost, but not exactly. It's almost like going for. Here I am right now. I'm fortunate enough right now to be in Florida. You can see the palm trees and stuff out there, and the Gulf of Mexico out there. And you can walk along that beach in the daytime, call that meditation. You can walk along it at nighttime. There's a lot of, I mean, it's still you experiencing it. So the experience, there's a lot of similarities, but it's different at night than it is at the day. And in the same way, yoga nidra and meditation to me have a different quality to them. Um, Let me give you another
Mhm.
example. Another allegory for meditation. I'm looking at the waves right now. Um, One of the experiences of meditation, and by the way, there's another step beyond meditation. I don't know if we'll have time or interest to go there, called samadhi. Um, um, yeah, maybe we'll go there. But let me talk about meditation for a second. Um, if you go out to a lake, and you say you're standing on the shore of the lake or on a pier looking down into the water, and there's some waves and ripples in the water, which is normally how mostly. So sometimes there's storms and it's all tumultuous, and sometimes like it's sunset or times when there's no wind, it gets very, very still, like a mirror. Well, when it becomes still like a mirror, that's kind of what a state of meditation is like. Um, if there's waves in the water and you look down into the water, you'll see your reflection a little bit, but it'll be bouncing around in the waves. And sometimes you can see a fish or a turtle or some rocks at the bottom, but you don't have a clear view because the waves keep changing what you can see. But when it becomes still like a mirror, something really beautiful happens. You can see yourself perfectly clearly. You can see the clouds and the sky up above you and the trees behind you really clearly in the reflection. And you can also look down through the surface of the water. You can see the fish and the plants and the rocks and the turtles on the other side. So when the mind becomes still, you get this experience of, you can see the reality more clearly. Because it's that's a beautiful way to think about meditation. Where Yoga Nidra is more like, I was going to say like becoming the lake. I don't know. I have never said that before, but it's a different experience. In Yoga Nidra, you're not aware of your body or the what do you say the Buddhist was aware of, the frustration or or some anxiety or something.
Anxiety.
It just, all of that is gone, and it's just an experience of being. Where in meditation, it's a little bit different. Let me also throw in a little bit of a difference between meditation from the Buddhist perspective, which I'm not really an expert on, versus the yoga perspective. And there's a cute little joke in here. In Buddhist meditation, you observe, they call it mindfulness generally. And again, I might be getting this wrong, so one of your other speakers might have a better explanation of this. But basically, the thought arises and you just watch it as long as you can. This anger comes up, this happiness comes up, this thought comes up, this sensation, this sound comes in, and you just watch your mind watching that and experiencing it. And it's just kind of there with you. And as you said, it tends to make those things have less of a hold over you. In yoga meditation, the experience is more one of turning inward and letting go of those things, as opposed to continuing to observe them. So in a Buddhist meditation, if you hear a bird, it's like, oh, I hear a bird. Oh, the bird is singing rapidly. Oh, I'm enjoying the sound of that singing rapidly. And you kind of stay with it like that in a Buddhist meditation. In a yoga meditation, you'd get distracted and you go, oh, I'm hearing a bird. Oh, I'm aware that I'm hearing that bird. Okay, bird, thank you. I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to come back to my mantra. I'm going to return my awareness back to my breath. So you keep bringing the awareness back inside in a yogic meditation. And the joke is that I was going to say, and I'll add a little bit of interesting scientific research from this. But the joke is that if you have a Buddhist monk and a yogic monk meditating together, and a train goes by, and when it's all over, you say, "Wow, how could you guys meditate when that train went by?" The Buddhist monk will go, no problem. I heard the sounds of the train, and I could hear the whistle, and I could hear the cars stopping and waiting for the crossing going down. And he was aware of all of those things, and he watched them, and it made his experience very, very rich and full. And the yogi will look at him and he'll go, "What train?" It's like he was like so focused that he didn't hear that. And so but they both require an intense concentration. To be aware of your thoughts and the sounds and all those things, you have to concentrate very, very intently on the experiences coming in, or the experiences that are within, because some of them are already within and some of them are your reaction to the things that are coming in. Where in yoga, the training is to focus inward and find that stillness within. And so there's slightly different forms of meditation. Again, I can't really say how accurate that is in the Buddhist perspective, but I think it's close enough for our purposes here. But here's some interesting research I heard, and this was back in, probably heard this in 1977 or so at the University of Wisconsin. I was attending a lecture, a guest lecture. I was in the psychology department, and there used to be a magazine. I think I'm not studying psychology anymore, but there used to be a magazine called Psychology Today, and the publisher at the time was a guy named Joseph Goldman, I think. I might be getting his name wrong, but he was the editor of Psychology Today back in the 70s, and he wrote a book called Varieties of Meditation Experience. And so this is where I heard this. I've never gone back and looked it up somewhere else, but have you ever heard of the term alpha blocking? I'll explain what that is. Yeah. So for example, a normal person, if I'm just sitting here, and remember in school, they had those clocks that would go every minute, it would go tick, and then it would be quiet for a minute, and then the hand would move and it would go tick. A normal person, if you're relaxed and you hear some stimulus like that, and you're relaxed, you're in this nice alpha state. So this is being done in a scientific setting with control studies and all that. And you hear that sound, the alpha waves will break up and turn into beta waves, like, oh, what was that? And then it'll calm back down into relaxation. And then a minute later, you hear that tick again, and you get this arousal. And then after 4 or 5 times, it's like you don't pay any more attention to it. Your brain doesn't go into, it doesn't block the alpha waves anymore. You just hear that tick and you stay in an alpha state because your mind has adapted to that, and it's saying, okay, it's not important, I'm not going to worry about it. Though if you heard a growl behind you, you'd probably get some alpha blocking. Okay, a Buddhist monk in meditation never gets alpha blocking. Every time something comes into his awareness, it goes out there and grabs onto it and embraces that sound. Okay, that this particular experiment was done with sounds. A yogi in deep meditation never gets the arousal in the first place. There's that noise and his mind doesn't wander. Now, this is probably a more experienced yogi than I am, but these experiments were done with, like I said, back in the 70s. I don't know if they've been replicated since then or not. But so they're slightly different approaches, but they both require an intense discipline, and they both, the yogis and the Buddhist monks, both report intense self-understanding and realization, and reports that it changes their life for the better.
Well, it might come down to, for certain people, one might prefer one over the other, or one might find it easier to do one or the other. You know.
Yeah. The type of personality that you have, and actually, that's what a good yoga teacher needs to teach his students. Someone who's got let's say you have 2 healthy students. One's super flexible and over flexible. You ever seen people whose knees bend backwards and their arms bend backwards? You have to teach them yoga very different than you teach a stocky person who has a lot of strength but not much flexibility. They could both learn yoga, but the stocky person can lock his knees when he's doing certain exercises. The person with the hyperflexibility has to learn how not to lock their knees, because if they do, they can damage their ligaments and tissues. So the teacher has to teach the person how to look within and find out what their own capability is, and to play around at those edges, and to learn how to go deeper on their own without hurting themselves, because obviously the teacher's not with you 24/7. So in the same sense, there's a lot of practices in the yoga and meditation tradition, and yeah, whatever your personality is. Some people that, as a matter of fact, one of the first things, have you ever heard of pranayama, often called breath work?
Yeah,
it's the fourth limb of the 8 limbs of yoga. I'm still not used to this delay in a discussion, but there's exercises that will wake you up and stimulate you, and there's exercises that will calm you down. And when you're leading someone into meditation, um, everybody can use a little bit of that. Everybody can do a few deep breaths, and everybody can use a little bit of a chill out. But what you need to teach your student, if you're wired, you don't want to do a lot of deep breathing. That'll make you more wired. You want to do more diaphragmatic breathing and one called alternate nostril and some other things that'll calm you down. But if you're like really sleepy, you want to do some things that are going to wake you up, because you bring yourself into this nice equilibrium and balance, and then you can go on to meditation. But if you're all vibrating and upset and stuff, you need something to calm you down. And if you're sleepy, you need something to perk you up. And in the same sense, yeah, whatever your personality type is, one type of meditation might be more appropriate for you than another. Just like different exercises, you teach the an elderly person different exercises than you would a 20-year-old, and but they can still both be doing yoga exercises or gym exercises too. Same thing. There's things you can do, and the more it's in touch with the needs of that person, not just the needs of that person, but also the desires of that person, it'll help them be motivated to progress along that path and become more experienced and better at that practice.
Well, is Yoga Nidra something that you probably need to go to a teacher to learn, or can you like watch YouTube videos and do it?
You
if you're just
can,
getting started?
but yeah, you have the same problem with both of them. Is how do you know if the teacher's any good? How do you know if the YouTube is any good? Because there's so many of them out there. For example, with my students, I prefer that they come to experience it with me in person once. But after that, it's like if they made a recording of what I did, they could do that. There's a CD I recommend. I might have sent you the link to that CD from that Swami J that I mentioned earlier. He also has the audio files available on Udemy as audio files. But I don't think that's the best way to get started for the first experience. But it works. I haven't done a lot of work with meditation apps. I know lots of people do them, and they seem to be pretty effective and pretty powerful. But I would think that working with a teacher would probably be a little helpful too, because the teacher can see something that you're doing wrong and maybe eliminate. Oops, sorry about that. Let me silence this. And I'll turn it off now so it won't bother us again. My bad. What was I saying? So you take the the apps and the CDs can be very, very, very effective for Yoga Nidra. Here's a funny little thing. I think you've taken a yoga class, a couple yoga classes. You know how oftentimes when you go to yoga class, the teacher will be in front of you, and the students will all line up in a straight row. This will sound kind of funny, but the students on the one side will be hearing you through their left ear, and the students mostly through their left ear. The students on the other side will be hearing you mostly through their right ear. When I teach Yoga Nidra, I have them line up as if they were on a radius, so that their head is pointing directly at me and their feet are pointing far away from me, so that my speaking voice will go in evenly through both ears. Because one of the things we're trying to do is bring this union together. Actually, I haven't said it yet. No one said it here. The traditional translation of the word yoga means union, and it happens on so many different levels. You can think about your conscious and your subconscious, your individual self and the divine self, the soul and God, if you want to take it to a religious level. But on a lot of practical levels, it's the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, the left side of the brain, which has certain qualities, and the right side of the brain, which has other qualities. So I like my voice to be going into both ears so that both halves of the brain are getting it the same. So things that sounds kind of silly, but there's a lot of things that a good teacher can do that might make a difference. Because So I'd say go to a teacher if you can find one. If you can't, um, go to swamij.com, just like it sounds, swamj.com, and look up his CD. And that's probably as good a place to start as any. Plus, he has some good writings on it. It will be over the heads of most beginners, but as you get into the practice, you can come back and enjoy them. He tends to be very, very scholarly and very, very detailed. Not necessarily the best place to read for a beginner, but his CD works very well for a beginner.
So, where can people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you?
Well, I have a couple of yoga schools, so I have a pretty easy website, so I'll start there. www.aum.org, om.org, spelled AUM. And they should be able to find me there. I'm on Facebook with my name, Matt Lerner. I don't know if it's Matt Lerner or Matthew Lerner. I think it's Matt Lerner. My email, what's my current email that I'm using? SLS Yoga Center, SLS Yoga Center at gmail.com. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to people. I'm on Facebook a lot in a couple of the yoga groups, so people can reach out to me the same way you did. So
Yeah. Well, is there like one final word you'd like to leave with the audience before we close out?
oh yeah, why don't we do a very short guided relaxation, and I'll say a few things as we come out of it. Okay. So if you're listening right now, why don't you just, if you're
Okay.
sitting up, sit up comfortably with your head, neck, and trunk as straight as comfortable. Your arms comfortably on your knees, your lap. If you're lying down, just lie down comfortably. And exhale deeply and totally empty your lungs. Force all the air out of your lungs. And then take 3 deep, complete breaths, totally emptying and totally filling. As deep as you can, get all the air out, all the air in. This will kind of kickstart your sympathetic nervous system, one that has a fight or flight response. And when you're done with that 3rd deep breath, let your breathing return to normal. And now see if you can breathe diaphragmatically, which for the most part means don't use your chest muscles. You might feel that your chest is moving as the air comes in and out, but you're not actively moving your chest muscles to do this. As you pull your diaphragm down, your belly will tend to come forward. But don't worry about it. Just breathe gently. And your stomach will probably be coming forward as you inhale and coming in as you exhale. And try to breathe through your nostrils if possible. And try to breathe as smoothly and as steadily and as silently as you can, trying to remove all jerks from the breath, all pauses in the breath, and all noise. Now, you won't get that perfect, but try to do it as much as you can. Diaphragmatic, smooth, steady, and silent, trying to remove all jerks, all pauses, all noise. Now, if you happen to notice a pause at the end of your exhalation, that's okay if it's for a second or two at the end of your exhalation, but try to remove all other jerks and pauses. If it's not there, you don't need to put it in. If it is there, you don't need to take it out. Diaphragmatic, smooth, steady, silent. And the length of the exhalation should be equal to or longer than the inhalation. And just watch the breath flow out and in and out. And for right now, you'll notice all sorts of distractions coming from within your mind and from outside, maybe the sounds. That's okay, that's normal. But when you become aware that your mind is wandering, don't fight it, just acknowledge that distraction, that wandering, and then bring your awareness back to your breath, watching the breath flow out and in and in and out. If you're aware that your mind is wandering, just let go of the distraction. Watch the breath flow out and in. And hopefully you're touching some stillness inside of you. I'd love to go on for another 30 minutes of silence now, but I want to start to breathe a little bit deeper. And if you haven't opened your eyes yet, keep them closed, and you can bring your palms up and cover your eyes. You might be surprised at how dark it gets when you do that. Then you can open your eyes into your palms and slowly bring your palms away, expanding your awareness out into the world around you. And again, a few deep breaths to wake you up. And so for a closing thought, I really encourage you to take a couple of regular yoga classes, some meditation classes. Try to get a Yoga Nidra class if you can. You can find good ones online, but I would do really gentle stuff. It's not worth hurting yourself until you learn about your body and your mind and your breath a little bit more. Experience a nice wide variety of teachers, and if you find one you like, hang out with them as online or in person as much as you can. And regular practice is much more important. For example, if you're a meditation student of mine, I'd say it's much more important to do 10 minutes of meditation a day than it is to do an hour a week. The regularity has an incredible impact on you. So try to be regular, be gentle, try to discover yourself, and good luck and God bless.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today.
Mm-hmm.
I spent several years of my life stressed, anxious, and depressed. I needed to find something that would make my life work. For me, that was meditation. With meditation, I found the peace of mind that I was looking for. I found the happiness, and I found a way to improve every area of my life, my emotional life, my spiritual life, my relationships. I was able to discover things about myself. I can give you the tools to meditate. I will walk you through the process and hold your hand. Whether you're a beginner to meditation who's never meditated, or whether you're someone who's tried meditation and it just never seemed to work, we can make it work. Meditation is something that everyone can do, and I can show you how. Check out my course on meditation.